The sound of the front door closing at 4:47 a.m. should have been quiet, should have been careful, but Brandon Wells was too drunk, too satisfied, too stupidly confident to care anymore. He stumbled into the foyer of their Westchester mansion, reeking of perfume that wasn't his wife's, lipstick smudged on his collar like a neon sign screaming guilt. What Brandon didn't know was that Claire Wells was standing in the darkness of their living room, her phone in hand, watching him through the doorway. And she wasn't crying. She wasn't shaking. She was smiling. Because after 10 years of building his empire while he built his ego, she'd finally made her decision. And Brandon Wells, CEO of Wells Global Industries, had no idea his entire world was about to burn. Late meeting? Claire's voice cut through the darkness like a blade. Brandon jumped, his hand flying to his chest. When he flipped on the light, he found his wife sitting on the leather couch, still dressed in the clothes she'd worn yesterday, her dark hair pulled back, her eyes cold and clear. Before we dive deeper into this story, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button right now and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Trust me, you're gonna want to see how this unfolds. Now, back to the story. God, Claire, you scared me half to death. Brandon tried to laugh, but it came out strangled. What are you doing up? Waiting for you. She stood slowly, and something in her movement made Brandon's alcohol-soaked brain register danger. Who is she? Who is who? Baby, I don't know what you're... Jasmine Cortez, 26, marketing coordinator at your company. You've been sleeping with her for 7 months. Claire's voice was steady, almost conversational. You took her to the Peninsula Hotel tonight, room 407. You checked in at 9:15 p.m. You're wearing the same suit you left in this morning, except now it has her lipstick on the collar, Russian red in case you're wondering. I can smell her perfume from here. Chanel Chance. Cute choice. Brandon felt the blood drain from his face. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Claire walked toward him and he instinctively stepped back. How long have you known? Does it matter? Claire tilted her head. What matters is what happens next, Brandon. See, while you were building your reputation as the brilliant CEO who turned a $5 million startup into a $300 million corporation, you forgot something important. You forgot that I'm not just your wife. I'm Claire Whitman Wells. I came from money, real money, old money, the kind that taught me exactly how business works. And for 10 years, I've been watching you very, very carefully. Claire, please let me explain. Explain what, Brandon? That you thought I was too focused on my charity work to notice? That you assumed I was too quiet, too comfortable, too trusting? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Brandon, I noticed everything. Every late meeting, every business trip that lasted 2 days too long, every credit card charge you thought I wouldn't see. I noticed all of it. I just waited for the right moment. Brandon tried to gather himself, tried to find the confidence that made boardrooms bow to him. Look, I made a mistake. I'll end it. We can go to counseling. Claire, we've built a life together. No, Brandon, you built it. I funded it. The words hung in the air like a guillotine. Brandon stared at his wife, really looked at her for the first time in years. When had she become this woman? When had the quiet, supportive wife who smiled at his business dinners turned into this cold, calculating stranger?
What are you talking about? Claire pulled an envelope from the coffee table and tossed it at his feet. The initial investment that started Wells Global? That wasn't your savings. That was my trust fund. $5 million. The building you're so proud of? I co-signed the loan. My family connections got you meetings with half your major clients. My financial advice, which you took and claimed as your own brilliant strategy, turned your company profitable in year 2 instead of year 5. She paused. You've been playing CEO with my money, my name, and my network, and you thanked me by sleeping with a woman young enough to be your daughter? Claire, that's not how it was. Here's how it is now. She walked past him to the front door and opened it. Standing on the porch was a man in a dark suit carrying a briefcase. Brandon, this is Thomas Rivera. He's a process server. Tommy, you can give him the papers now. Brandon watched, frozen, as the man walked forward and handed him a thick manila folder. Brandon Wells, you've been served. Have a good evening, sir." The man left as quickly as he'd arrived. Brandon opened the folder with shaking hands. Divorce papers, but not just divorce papers. There were financial documents, asset declarations, company shareholding records. His eyes scanned the pages faster and faster, his breath coming in short gasps. This says you own 43% of Wells Global. 43.7, actually. Turns out when you invest $5 million into a startup and your name is on half the company documents, even if your husband conveniently forgets to mention it, you're entitled to your share. My lawyers have been very thorough. You can't do this. You can't just take my company. Our company, Brandon. And I'm not taking it. I'm claiming what's already mine. You'll notice the filing date. I initiated this 3 weeks ago. I've also called an emergency board meeting for Monday morning. The board will be very interested to learn about your relationship with an employee. That's a violation of company policy, by the way, the policy you signed, the one about maintaining professional boundaries and ethical conduct. Brandon felt his legs weaken. He grabbed the doorframe for support. "Claire, please, don't do this. We can figure this out. I'll give you whatever you want. More money, the house, anything." "I don't want more, Brandon. I want what I'm owed. 10 years of watching you parade around like you built an empire from nothing while I stood in the background and smiled. 10 years of being introduced as Brandon Wells's wife instead of Claire Whitman Wells, the woman who actually made it possible." Her voice cracked for the first time, just slightly. 10 years of believing that maybe love was enough, that partnership mattered, that loyalty meant something. "It does. Claire, I love you." "You love what I provided. There's a difference." She picked up her purse from the entryway table. "I'm staying at the plaza. My lawyers will contact you Monday morning. The board meeting is at 9. I suggest you prepare your resignation because when they see the evidence of your affair with an employee combined with my shareholding position, you're finished at Wells Global. You can fight me if you want, but my family has more lawyers than you have lies." She walked toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and Brandon, Jasmine Cortez received a very generous job offer from Wellington Industries yesterday. She starts Monday. Interesting how she didn't mention she was leaving, isn't it? Almost like she was never actually interested in you, just your position, your money. Funny how that works." Claire walked out into the early morning darkness, leaving Brandon standing in the foyer of a mansion he suddenly realized might not be his much longer, holding divorce papers that detailed exactly how much of his life had been a comfortable illusion. And somewhere in that broken moment, Brandon Wells finally understood he hadn't married a quiet, simple woman. He'd married a strategist, and he'd just lost the most important game of his life. If you're hooked on this story, go ahead and hit that like button. Drop a comment and let me know, did Brandon deserve what's coming to him? And stay tuned because this is just the beginning of his downfall. Brandon didn't sleep. How could he? He sat in the home office that overlooked their perfectly manicured backyard, the divorce papers spread across his mahogany desk like evidence at a crime scene. The sun came up slowly, painfully, each ray of light revealing another detail he'd been too blind to see before. His phone buzzed. A text from Jasmine. "Hey, baby, last night was amazing. Can't wait for tonight." He stared at the message, feeling sick. Claire had known. She'd known everything, and she'd waited. She'd planned. While he thought he was getting away with something, she'd been 3 steps ahead, building a case, securing her position, preparing for war. Another text came through, this time from his brother. "Dude, what the hell is going on? Mom just called me crying. She said Claire's lawyer contacted her." Brandon's stomach dropped. Claire's lawyer had contacted his mother? He dialed his brother's number with shaking hands. "Tyler, what did Mom say?" "She said something about the company, about Claire owning part of it." "Brandon, what's happening? Did you two have a fight?" It's complicated." "Complicated? Mom said Claire's family is involved. The Whitmans don't get involved in anything small, bro. What did you do?" Brandon closed his eyes. I messed up. I messed up bad." How bad? I've been seeing someone at work. Claire found out. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then Tyler's voice came back, low and disappointed. You idiot. You absolute idiot. Do you have any idea what you've done? Claire's not just some wife you can smooth talk. Her family practically owns half the East Coast. And you cheated on her? I know. I'm trying to figure out how to fix this. Fix it? Brandon, from what Mom said, this is already done. Claire's not asking for a divorce. She's taking one. There's a difference. Brandon ended the call and buried his face in his hands. His phone kept buzzing. Messages from friends, business associates, even his assistant asking if everything was okay. How did people already know? Then he remembered the board meeting. Monday morning, Claire had called an emergency board meeting. He pulled up his email and found it. The meeting notice had been sent Friday afternoon to all board members. Subject line, critical company matters requiring immediate attention. Claire had copied him on it, which meant she wanted him to see it, wanted him to spend the weekend drowning in panic. The doorbell rang at noon. Brandon stumbled downstairs, still wearing yesterday's clothes, and opened the door to find his lawyer, Mitchell Crawford, standing there with his own briefcase. Mitchell, thank God. I need you to... I know why I'm here, Brandon. Claire's legal team contacted me this morning. Can I come in? They sat in the living room, the same room where Claire had ambushed him hours earlier. Mitchell spread his own set of documents on the coffee table. Brandon, I'm going to be straight with you. This is bad. This is really, really bad. How bad? Claire owns 43.7% of Wells Global. That's documented, legal, and ironclad. She has paper trails going back 10 years showing her initial investment, her co-signing on loans, even emails where you consulted her on major business decisions, and she provided strategic advice. She's not just some wife claiming marital assets. She's a legitimate business partner you somehow forgot existed. But I built that company. I'm the one who worked 18-hour days. With her money, Brandon, and now she's calling in the debt. Mitchell pulled out another document. She's also got a sexual harassment case built against you. What? Jasmine and I were consensual. She wanted...
Jasmine Cortez is an employee. You're the CEO. That's a power imbalance. It doesn't matter if she wanted it. Company policy strictly prohibits romantic relationships between executives and subordinates. You signed that policy. You violated it. And Claire has hotel receipts, credit card statements, even security footage from the peninsula showing you two checking in together. Brandon felt the walls closing in. What does she want? Mitchell looked him straight in the eye. She wants majority control of the company, the house, half of all liquid assets, and your resignation as CEO. She's not negotiating. She's telling you how it's going to be. And if I fight her? Then she goes nuclear. She'll drag this through court, expose the affair publicly, tank the company's reputation, and use her family's connections to destroy whatever's left of your career. The Whitmans don't lose, Brandon. They don't even play games they might lose. Brandon stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the gardener was trimming the hedges, completely unaware that the man who paid his salary was watching his entire life collapse. How did I not see this coming? Because you underestimated your wife, Mitchell said quietly. You saw what you wanted to see, a quiet woman who supported your dreams. You didn't see the strategic mind behind it, the business degree from Wharton, the family that built fortunes by being smarter than everyone else in the room. What do I do? You accept her terms. You sign the papers, you resign Monday morning before the board meeting, and you hope she's merciful enough to let you walk away with something. Brandon turned around. And if I don't? Mitchell packed up his briefcase. Then you'll learn exactly how ruthless the Whitmans can be when you cross them. And Brandon, you didn't just cross them. You humiliated their daughter. That's not something they forgive. After Mitchell left, Brandon tried calling Claire, straight to voicemail. He tried again, same result. He sent a text, "Please, can we just talk, face to face?" An hour later, his phone rang, unknown number. "Hello?
This is Jennifer Morrison from Claire Wells's legal team. Mrs. Wells has instructed me to inform you that all communication must go through her attorneys. Any attempt to contact her directly will be documented and used as evidence of harassment. Do you understand? I just want to talk to my wife. Your soon-to-be ex-wife has made her wishes clear. The board meeting is Monday at 9 a.m. Your presence is required. I suggest you bring legal counsel. Have a good day, Mr. Wells. The line went dead. Brandon threw his phone across the room, watching it shatter against the wall. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. Just yesterday morning, he'd woken up thinking he had everything under control. A successful company, a beautiful wife who didn't ask questions, and a young girlfriend who made him feel alive again. How had it all fallen apart so fast? His phone, the shattered one on the floor, buzzed with a notification. He picked up the pieces and saw an email from Wells Global's PR department. Someone had leaked the news. The headline on the business blog read, "Wells Global CEO Brandon Wells faces divorce and potential ouster amid affair allegations." The article detailed everything: the affair, Claire's ownership stake, the emergency board meeting. His hands trembled as he read his own downfall spelled out in black and white for the entire business world to see. Another email came through, this time from the board chairman. "Brandon, we need to talk before Monday. This is serious." Everything was unraveling. 10 years of building, climbing, succeeding, gone in less than 24 hours. And the worst part? Claire had done it without raising her voice, without tears, without drama. She'd simply revealed the truth he'd been too arrogant to acknowledge. He'd never been the only architect of his success. He'd just been the face of it. And now that face was about to be removed from the empire he thought he'd built. Don't go anywhere. This story is about to get even more intense. Hit that like button if you're feeling the tension, and drop a comment telling me what you think Brandon should do next. Can he salvage anything from this mess, or is Claire about to finish what she started?
Monday morning came like an execution date. Brandon stood outside the Wells Global boardroom at 8:45 a.m., his suit perfectly pressed, his tie straight, but his hands wouldn't stop shaking. Mitchell stood beside him, briefcase in hand, looking like a man preparing for a funeral. "Remember," Mitchell whispered, "let me do the talking. Don't get emotional, don't make promises you can't keep, and whatever you do, don't lose your temper." Brandon nodded, but he wasn't listening. He was staring at the closed boardroom doors, wondering what waited for him on the other side. Wondering if Claire was already in there, sitting calmly while his world burned down around him. The doors opened. Margaret Chen, the board secretary, stood there with an expression that told Brandon everything he needed to know, pity mixed with professional distance. "They're ready for you, Mr. Wells." He walked into the room he'd commanded for 8 years, the room where he closed million-dollar deals and made decisions that shaped the company's future. But today, he felt like a stranger entering enemy territory. The board members sat around the massive conference table, 12 faces, some sympathetic, some carefully neutral, and some openly hostile. And at the far end of the table, in what used to be the guest chair, sat Claire. She wore a navy business suit, her hair pulled back, her expression calm and professional. Next to her sat 2 lawyers and a man Brandon didn't recognize. "Brandon, please sit." Richard Patterson, the board chairman, gestured to a chair. Not his usual seat at the head of the table, a side chair. The message was clear. Brandon sat. Mitchell took the chair beside him. "I think we all know why we're here," Richard began. "We've received some disturbing information over the weekend regarding Brandon's conduct and certain ownership details that have come to light. Claire, would you like to present your case?" Claire stood. She didn't look at Brandon. She addressed the board like she'd done this 1,000 times before. "Thank you, Richard. 10 years ago, I invested $5 million from my trust fund into what was then called Wells Consulting. That investment became the seed money for Wells Global Industries. I also co-signed on the commercial loan that allowed us to purchase our headquarters building. My family connections facilitated introductions to 70% of our current major clients. I've provided strategic business advice that's documented in over 300 emails, many of which led directly to profitable decisions. She clicked a remote and a presentation appeared on the screen behind her. Documents, email chains, bank statements, everything organized, professional, devastating. I've been an active, if silent, partner in this company for a decade. My ownership stake is 43.7%. That's not a marital asset up for division. That's my legal business ownership. And as a major shareholder, I have serious concerns about the CEO's recent conduct. Another click. Hotel receipts, credit card statements, time-stamped security footage showing Brandon and Jasmine entering the Peninsula Hotel together. Brandon Wells engaged in a 7-month affair with Jasmine Cortez, a company employee 20 years his junior. This violates our ethics policy, creates a liability for sexual harassment claims, and demonstrates a severe lack of judgment from our chief executive. One of the board members, Sarah Chan, spoke up. "Claire, I have to ask, why are you bringing this to the board instead of handling it privately through your divorce?" "Because this isn't just about my marriage, Sarah. This is about the company's integrity. If we allow executives to violate our ethics policies without consequences, what message does that send? What liability does that create? And more importantly, what happens when our clients find out, when investors find out, when employees find out that the rules don't apply to the man at the top?"
The room went quiet. Brandon felt every eye on him. He wanted to speak, to defend himself, but Mitchell's hand on his arm stopped him. Richard cleared his throat. "Brandon, do you have a response?" Brandon stood slowly. "I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but this company wouldn't exist without me. I've worked 18-hour days for years. I've brought in clients, closed deals, built this from nothing." "From $5 million, Claire interrupted, her voice sharp. "From my family's connections, from business advice you claimed as your own insights. Brandon, you worked hard, I'm not denying that, but you didn't build this alone. You just convinced yourself you did." "Claire, please." Brandon's voice cracked. "Don't do this. We can work this out. I'll step back, take a reduced role, anything." "I'm not here for compromises." Claire turned back to the board. "I'm calling for Brandon's immediate resignation as CEO. I'm also proposing that I step into an active leadership role as interim CEO until the board can conduct a proper search for a permanent replacement." The room erupted. Board members talking over each other, some in support, some in shock. Richard banged his gavel. "Order! Everyone, please!" He looked at Claire. "You're asking to replace your husband as CEO of his own company?" "Our company, Richard. And yes, I have the business credentials, Wharton MBA, 10 years of strategic involvement with Wells Global, and more importantly, I haven't violated company policy or created massive liability concerns. I'm also the second largest shareholder. I'm not asking permission. I'm informing the board of my intentions and giving Brandon the courtesy of resigning before I force a vote." Brandon felt the floor dropping out from under him. "You can't do this. The board won't let you." "Actually," came a voice from the other end of the table, Michael Torres, one of the newer board members. "I think we should hear her out. Claire's right about the liability. If news of this affair gets out, and it will, we need to show we took immediate action, that we don't tolerate this behavior." "Michael, come on," Brandon pleaded. "We've worked together for 3 years." "And in those 3 years, you never mentioned that Claire was a major investor, that she had strategic input on half our biggest deals. You presented everything as your own vision, your own work." He looked at him with something like disappointment. "How many other things weren't exactly as you presented them, Brandon?"
The man sitting next to Claire's lawyers finally spoke. "If I may, I'm David Whitman, Claire's uncle. I'm here as a family representative and as someone with 40 years of corporate leadership experience. I've reviewed Wells Global's financials, strategic decisions, and operational history. Claire's fingerprints are all over the successful moves this company has made. The failed initiatives? Those were the ones where Brandon overruled her advice or didn't consult her at all." He stood and walked to the presentation screen, pulling up a new slide. This chart shows company performance correlation with documented strategic input from Claire. Notice anything? The pattern was undeniable. Every successful quarter, every major client win, every smart pivot, they all corresponded with email chains where Claire had provided advice or made introductions. Now look at this. Another slide. These are the quarters where Brandon made unilateral decisions against Claire's counsel. Notice the dips in performance, the client losses, the near miss with that lawsuit 3 years ago that Claire warned about. Richard leaned back in his chair, studying the data. "Brandon, is this accurate?" Brandon wanted to lie, wanted to fight, but the evidence was right there on the screen, undeniable and damning. Claire has always been supportive. She's given advice, yes, but...
"But you took credit for it," Claire said quietly. "Every single time. Every board meeting where you presented a new strategy, you never once mentioned that we discussed it for hours the night before, that I'd run the numbers, that I'd made the calls to set up the meetings. You erased me from the narrative because it was easier to be the sole genius than to share credit with your wife." The truth of it hit Brandon like a physical blow. She was right. He'd done exactly that. Not maliciously, not consciously, but he'd done it. He'd taken her contributions and made them his accomplishments, and now she was taking them back. Richard looked around the table. "I think we need to vote. All in favor of accepting Brandon Wells' resignation as CEO, effective immediately." "Wait," Brandon started, but Mitchell grabbed his arm again. "Don't," Mitchell whispered. "You'll only make it worse." 7 hands went up, then 8, then 10. 12 faces, and 10 of them voted to end his career. "The motion passes," Richard said heavily. "Brandon, I'm sorry, but given the circumstances, the board believes this is the best course of action. We'll arrange a severance package and transition plan." Brandon stood there, numb, watching his entire identity dissolve in front of him. CEO of Wells Global. That's who he'd been. That's who he told himself he was. And now? Now, he was just the man who'd thrown everything away for a woman who'd already moved on to her next job. This is getting real now. If you're still watching, smash that like button and drop a comment. Do you think Claire went too far, or is this exactly what Brandon deserved? Stay with me, because the final chapter of Brandon's downfall is coming up next. Brandon cleaned out his office on Tuesday morning, the corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown, the office with his name on the door, except the nameplate was already gone. Maintenance had removed it overnight, like erasing him from history. He packed his personal items into a cardboard box, photos of company milestones, awards with his name engraved on them, a motivational plaque that read, "Success is built on vision and determination." The irony wasn't lost on him now. There was a knock on the door. He turned to see Claire standing there, still in her business suit, looking every bit the CEO she was about to become. "I didn't think you'd come," Brandon said, his voice hollow. "I wanted to see you before you left, not as your wife, as the person taking over your position." She stepped into the office but didn't come close. "The board voted this morning. I'm officially interim CEO. They'll conduct a search for a permanent replacement, but my uncle thinks they'll offer me the position full-time within 6 months." "Congratulations," Brandon said bitterly. "You got everything you wanted." "Did I?" Claire's voice had an edge to it now. "Brandon, I wanted a partner. I wanted a husband who saw me as an equal, someone who valued what I brought to the table. Instead, I got 10 years of being invisible, 10 years of watching you accept praise for work we did together, 10 years of being introduced as an accessory to your success. I never meant. It doesn't matter what you meant. It matters what you did." She walked to the window, looking out at the city below.
Do you know what the worst part was? It wasn't the cheating. I mean, that hurt. God, it hurt. But the worst part was realizing that you genuinely didn't see what you'd done. You really believed you'd built all this yourself, that I was just there, supportive, background noise. Brandon set down the box he was holding. Claire, I see that now, but did you have to destroy everything? We could have divorced quietly. You didn't have to take the company. Take it? Claire turned to face him, and for the first time he saw real anger in her eyes. Brandon, I built this company with you, not for you, with you. Every dollar you spent came from my initial investment. Every major client came from my family's connections. Every successful strategy had my input. I didn't take anything. I claimed what was already mine. You were the one who tried to steal it by pretending I didn't exist.
That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Her voice rose slightly, the first crack in her controlled demeanor. I could have led with the affair, made it public immediately, destroyed your reputation completely, but I gave you a chance to resign with dignity. I could have pursued criminal charges for the financial misrepresentation. Yes, Brandon, not disclosing a major investor to the board is fraud, but I didn't. I could have made sure you never worked in this industry again, but instead, I'm letting you walk away with a severance package and your professional reputation mostly intact. So don't talk to me about fair. Brandon slumped into his desk chair. No, not his chair anymore, just a chair in an office that would soon belong to someone else. What happens now? Now? You sign the divorce papers, you take your severance, you figure out who Brandon Wells is when he's not the CEO of a company someone else built for him. Claire picked up a photo from his desk. It was from their wedding day, both of them smiling, young, hopeful. You know what's sad? I really did love you. When we started this, when you had nothing but ideas and ambition, I believed in you. I wanted to help you succeed, but somewhere along the way, you started believing your own press releases. You forgot that success is never built by one person alone. She set the photo down and walked to the door, then paused. Jasmine quit yesterday, by the way. She didn't even last a week at her new job. Turns out, Wellington Industries did background checks and found out about your affair. They rescinded the offer. Last I heard, she's filing for unemployment and considering legal action against you for emotional distress and career damage. Brandon's head snapped up. She's suing me? Apparently. Something about how you promised her career advancement and instead destroyed her professional reputation. Her lawyer sent a letter to Mitchell this morning. You'll probably want to discuss it with him. Mitchell's expression was unreadable. That's what happens when you use people, Brandon. Eventually, they figure it out, and they stop being grateful for the crumbs you threw them. You set that up, the job at Wellington, the background check. I made a phone call to a colleague, mentioned there might be complications with hiring someone from Wells Global right now. What they did with that information was their choice. She shrugged. Consider it a lesson. Actions have consequences for everyone. After Claire left, Brandon sat in the empty office for another hour. Outside, he could hear the sounds of the company moving on without him. Phones ringing, people laughing, meetings starting, life continuing as if he'd never existed. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. Your father and I need to talk to you about the house. Claire's lawyers contacted us about the mortgage. Call us. The house. He'd forgotten about the house. Claire had co-signed, which meant she had claim to it. Was she taking that too? Another text, this time from Tyler. Saw the news. Board voted to keep Claire as CEO permanently. It's all over the business blogs. How are you holding up? Brandon didn't respond. How was he holding up? He'd lost his wife, his company, his reputation, his mistress, and possibly his house in the span of 4 days. How was anyone supposed to hold up after that? He picked up the wedding photo Claire had touched. They looked so happy, so naive. He'd had everything back then. A woman who loved him, believed in him, invested in him, and he took all of that for granted. He assumed her support was obligation rather than gift. Her contributions were background noise rather than foundation. Mitchell called an hour later. Brandon, we need to discuss Jasmine's lawsuit. She's claiming you coerced her into the relationship with promises of career advancement. Do you have any documentation that contradicts that?
What? No, she pursued me. Brandon stopped. Did he have proof of that? Text messages, sure, but they'd been deleted months ago when he got paranoid about Claire finding them. Mitchell, she was willing. She wanted it. Can you prove that? Because her lawyer has emails where you mention promotions and opportunities. They're spinning this as quid pro quo sexual harassment. And Brandon, given everything else that's happened, you don't exactly have credibility on your side right now. Brandon hung up and threw his phone across the room for the second time in 4 days. This one didn't shatter. It just bounced off the wall and landed on the carpet, screen down like even his phone had given up on him. He finished packing his box. 20 years of work reduced to a few personal items and a severance check that seemed generous until he calculated how long it would actually last. Without the CEO's salary, without the company's stock options, without the expense account and the company car and the prestige that opened doors, what did he have? The answer was sobering. Not much. Brandon walked out of Wells Global Industries at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. The security guard, James, who'd greeted him every morning for 8 years, nodded politely but didn't meet his eyes. The receptionist, Maria, was on the phone and didn't look up. Nobody stopped him. Nobody said goodbye. He loaded his box into his car, Claire's car, technically, since she'd co-signed the loan for that too, and sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes, staring at the building. His building, except it had never really been his, had it? It had been theirs. He just hadn't wanted to admit it. His phone buzzed one more time, an email from Claire's lawyer with the finalized divorce papers and property settlement. She was keeping the house, 43% of the company, and half of all liquid assets. He was getting his personal items, his car, once he refinanced it in his name alone, and a severance package that suddenly looked a lot smaller than it had this morning. At the bottom of the email was a note from Claire herself. Brandon, I hope someday you understand that this wasn't about revenge. It was about justice, about reclaiming what I built and refusing to be erased anymore. I hope you find success again, real success, the kind you actually earn yourself. But more than that, I hope you learn to see the people around you, to value their contributions, to recognize that nobody succeeds alone. Good luck. You're going to need it. Brandon read the note 3 times. Then he started his car and drove away from the building, the career, the identity he'd constructed. He didn't know where he was going. He didn't know who he was without the title, the office, the company bearing his name. But as he merged onto the highway, one thought kept echoing in his mind. Claire had been right about all of it. He'd built his empire on her foundation and then forgot she existed. He'd taken credit for her work, used her money, and betrayed her trust. And now she'd taken it all back, not because she was cruel, but because she refused to be invisible anymore. The real question was, could Brandon Wells rebuild himself into someone worth respecting? Or would he spend the rest of his life bitter, angry, and convinced he was the victim of his wife's revenge rather than the architect of his own downfall? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain. Claire Whitman Wells was no longer anyone's background noise. She was the CEO, the strategist, the woman who'd been underestimated the last time. And Brandon? He was just the man who learned too late that the person you take for granted might be the only thing holding your world together. So what do you think? Did Brandon get what he deserved, or did Claire go too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear what you think about this whole situation. And if you made it this far, you're part of an amazing community that loves real, raw storytelling. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Smash the like button to support the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what story you want to hear next. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Remember, actions have consequences, and karma never forgets.